Well, good evening, First Baptist Church. It's Wednesday night. We're glad that you're joining with us tonight as we continue to go through First Baptist Church through the eyes of the people. Tonight I have two special guests joining with me, Janet Vardaman and Margot Austin. So thank y'all for joining with me tonight and just sharing a little bit about your story. How long have y'all been at First Baptist?
I started thinking about this, and it's kind of like ducks imprint on their mother ducks and follow along.
Yeah.
Because we lived where our father's office was, Dr. Crow's office, just up the street. And so from my backyard, from that very first time, we could see the church.
Wow.
I mean, it was always there in our view.
Wow.
And I think it's imprinted that way.
Yeah. That's neat. So it's just sent their whole lives, and it just having to grow up that's not even 100 yards from the church.
Right.
Probably not.
Wow. So, well, tell us some stories, some memories that y'all have as y'all think about as a youth, as a child. What are some stories that y'all have about this place?
Well, I do remember we were located right here, so I do remember the construction of what was the new part of the building where we are now. Well, not now, but the addition to the back. And I remember Sunday school before this addition was built.
Mm-hmm.
And that my Sunday school class was located about where the women's restroom off the old sanctuary is. And there were about 2 or 3 little steps that you went up, and there was a small little room there.
Yeah.
And I remember that being my first Sunday school class. And I remember the basket that was passed for our nickels and dimes for our offering, because it had the most amazing red velveteen bottom in this little wicker basket. And I just have such a vivid memory of the offering from that time.
Neat. Can you remember the teacher who?
I don't remember that one, but one point that I really wanted to, if I'm going to share something that I really wanted to share, is that I remember so well my Sunday school teachers in the beginner department when we came down in this new part of the building, and in the primary department. I remember each of those teachers so well, and I wanted to especially let the people who were working with those age children, the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8s, how much that impacted me. That I do have vivid memories of being in those particular little rooms and the Sunday school teachers that we had then.
That's neat. That's neat. What about you, Margot?
Well, when she mentioned Sunday school teachers, I remember Miss Jewel Morrison, who I had in the primary department, and she convinced me how bad crucifixion really was.
Ooh.
And it really hit me hard that how much Jesus suffered.
Wow.
And I ended up praying for salvation and wanting to give my life for Jesus, and I always credit Miss Jewel for that.
Wow.
Because she made a real impact on me.
Yes, ma'am. As y'all think about into your adult years, what are some memories that, or even as a youth, what are some memories that y'all have?
We didn't really have a youth ministry when we were growing up, but so many other things continued on, like Bible school. Teenagers went to Bible school. It didn't stop at middle school. I mean, we had Bible school on up until that time, and Brother Walker was always a big part of that, working with the older children, with the youth during that time. So that was certainly something I remember.
Yes, ma'am.
Well,
Yes,
Brother Walker told the character stories after we had the opening. The big kids got to stay and hear a character story about some special individual Judson, people,
Uh-huh.
heroes
Yeah.
of the faith, William Carey.
Yeah.
Stories about them that made it become real, that you could identify with and appreciate the hardships they went through
Wow.
in
Yeah.
those early years of ministry.
Mm-hmm.
One of the funny things that happened from those character stories, and let's say Brother Walker telling some of those stories, I remember Gordon Baldwin, Kitty and Bob Baldwin's son, looking, I guess I was teaching Bible school at that time, or was one of the leaders that year, and Brother Walker said something, and Gordon had not been in Jasper that long. They had moved, and he said, "That must have been before I got here." That must have been before I got here.
That's great. Oh my. So, what has kept y'all coming back to First Baptist all these years?
I think we just have such deep roots here.
Yeah.
Because we, grew up the street. Our parents were very, very active in this church. My dad was the music director and choir director for up until David Stewart came.
Wow.
I mean, years and years. So we were here for Sunday school and church and Wednesday night and Sunday night for
Wow.
BTU, and
Yeah.
we were here, and there weren't school activities like there are now, and you didn't have pee-wee sports and junior sports, so the little ones
Mm-hmm.
came to church on weeknights without a problem.
Yes, ma'am.
And so it was sort of a different atmosphere then that I think we miss a lot. But yeah, I think when you mentioned Bible school was always a big activity, and we would come here, and then the Methodists would have it a different week, and
Yeah.
a bunch of us would go to the Methodist church.
Mm-hmm.
The Methodist kids would come here.
Yeah.
So give their parents an extra week of some break, summer vacation. But those were fun times. They really were.
What about you? What's Janet kept you coming back to this place?
One of the things, certainly, that I remember, Margot talked about remembering Miss Jewel and learning about Jesus' crucifixion. One of the things I remember especially during revival time, was that we all ran around the marble marker that's out there, before and after we'd get there. And my mother was always the last one to leave the church because she spoke to everyone. She was radical hospitality, so we were always the last to leave. So I remember playing, and I remember very well thinking that when they talked about joining the church and belonging to the church and this one being a part of the church, I said, "Oh yeah, I want to be part of this church." I mean, I remember that as a very young child thinking that, oh, this is where I belong. This is where I want to be.
Yeah.
And you talk about staying with people. There are not a lot of people who were here in this church when we were growing up, but there are several. So we see some of those. I remember Lisa Duckett and her sisters coming in with Miss Janice, and they were little steps down. They were younger than we were, but all of them had the long dark hair, and I remember seeing them come, and several of the families that were in the church then coming with all of their children, and seeing those people regularly be a part of things.
Wow, that's neat.
And we had, the kids sat in the front on the right side, and in revival we sat on the left side, and we got to choose hymns.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd always pick like "No, Never Alone" because you got to yell
No.
and we picked songs that had a punch to them, so we could get into it. And then the big kids sat in the back on the right side, so there were places that people were, it was your custom to congregate there.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. When I was like first grade, I remember sitting on the front pew.
Yeah.
And I remember my feet didn't touch the ground, and I was swinging my legs the whole time. I remember sitting on that front row pew before my feet even reached the floor. So.
Wow, that's neat.
You know, Janet joined the church when you were like 6, and
yeah,
brother Dr. Gibson stood her up on the front pew and let her stand there and explain to the whole church why she wanted to join.
Wow.
And then when I joined, we'd had a revival. Miss Jewel had put the fear of the Lord in me.
Yeah.
And she was a little tiny lady with white curls. And we were having baptism that Sunday night. So I decided I was going to get busy and make this decision and talk to my parents. But they walked me out for the baptism first. So they voted on me while I was standing in the baptistry. I already went. So they voted me in.
Thank goodness.
And I joined, but we both went, I guess, went about it a little unconventional way.
Wow.
This area where that was the fellowship hall, we had, when fellowship meals were very big in, I guess, the 80s and 90s, early 90s, because there was a strong a children's program and youth program there.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very grateful that I was able to have First Baptist Church and all the activities for my daughter growing up.
Yeah.
Because as a parent, there were so many things that certainly benefited our lives in that way, and the fellowship and the friendships and those things that continued. There was, of course, a youth program for her, and that was very, very important.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Janet, Margot, thank y'all. These are some great stories. Really appreciate y'all just walking down memory lane, about it. And I'm sure folks at home can connect and be like, yeah, I know that place, or I didn't know that same Sunday school teacher. And so thank y'all so much for sharing your time and for your commitment and your life here at First Baptist Church. So First Baptist Church, we look forward to seeing you next week as we continue to look through First Baptist Church through the eyes of the people. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you again next week.